Have you ever noticed how, like, physically exhausting it is to just hold on to something really tightly?
Oh, absolutely. It takes a massive toll.
Right. Like, imagine you're driving in heavy, totally unpredictable traffic. Your hands are gripping the steering wheel so hard, your knuckles go completely white.
Yeah, your shoulders creep all the way up to your ears.
Exactly. Your jaw is clenched. You're staring intensely at the bumper in front of you. You are exerting massive amounts of energy just trying to maintain absolute control over a situation that is constantly shifting. Now, take a step back and imagine doing that exact same thing, but with your entire life.
That's a phenomenal visual. I mean, it perfectly captures the baseline state of anxiety that so many of us operate in on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We grip the wheel of our careers, our friendships, our material possessions, and we just try to force them to go where we want them to go. We operate under this assumption that if we just hold on tight enough, we can somehow control the outcome.
We are basically white-knuckling our way through a random Tuesday.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, we've got a stack of philosophical writings in front of us today that look directly at this modern exhaustion. And they all center around this one profound concept called amana, or eminent, which translates to a sacred trust or an entrustment.
Right, and it's a really huge concept.
Totally. Our mission for today's deep dive is to explore how shifting our mindset from, owning the things and people in our lives to simply stewarding them can drastically lighten our mental load. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Where do we even start with a concept as massive as a sacred trust? Because honestly, it sounds like something you'd need to retreat to a monastery to actually practice.
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
But the foundational argument in these texts is that amana is not some lofty abstract theory. It's actually highly practical.
Really? How so?
Well, it's very small in its application. You don't carry this consciousness in grand, sweeping declarations. You carry it in your everyday stance.
Everyday stance. I like that.
Yeah, it is quite literally how you choose to look at a coworker, or how you modulate your tone when you speak to your family, and crucially, how you choose to just step back and not intervene in every single thing unfolding around you.
The phrase everyday stance is really interesting. It sort of implies you don't need to constantly recite a philosophical mantra to yourself. You just need to be vigilant about how you physically and mentally walk through the world.
Exactly. To live with the mindset of trust doesn't mean withdrawing from life to go meditate on a mountain.
Right.
It immerses you into life, but with a completely different kind of attention. The writings point out that this mindset actually protects a person from haste.
Oh, that makes sense. Because if you're not trying to control it.
Precisely. When you realize you are just stewarding the moment, it reduces that burning, anxious need to intervene and manipulate everything. You stop reacting to every minor inconvenience as if it's a personal attack on your kingdom.
I want to dig into that idea of the kingdom, actually, because the texts talk about the burden of false possession.
Yes, that's a key theme.
We walk around acting like we own things that we absolutely do not own. I'm trying to visualize this, and it reminds me of this really ridiculous scenario.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine you're renting a house. It's a nice house, you enjoy living there, but your name is definitely not on the deed.
Right, you're just a tenant.
Now imagine you're lying awake at 3 a.m, agonizing over the neighborhood zoning laws and stressing about the property taxes as if you were the actual owner.
Taking on the psychological weight of ownership without actually holding the deed.
Exactly.
That is incredibly common, actually.
I mean, it sounds like a form of madness when you apply it to a rental house, but we do this with almost everything intangible in our lives.
We really do.
We treat our fleeting time, our material objects, and our social status the exact same way. We act like we hold the permanent deed to our youth, or, our professional titles, and we exhaust ourselves trying to protect them from depreciating.
It's a compelling way to look at it because the consciousness of trust completely rewires that relationship.
How so?
Well, when you operate under the illusion of possession, your primary mechanism for interacting with the world is hoarding.
Oh, hoarding, like grabbing onto everything.
Right. You amass resources, time, power, and you try to pull everything toward your own center to build a fortress. But treating everything as temporary changes that.
Knowing that a job or a home is just placed in your hands for a specific duration.
Exactly. It stops you from squandering it. You don't scatter your words wastefully. You don't treat objects callously. You realize you aren't the owner. You are just the caretaker.
There is this couplet from the text that captures that feeling of being a caretaker so perfectly. Let me find it. Here. It goes, "He who walks with trust does not hurry his pace. He carries direction, not weight, through time with grace."
Carrying direction, not weight. That is the core mechanical shift right there.
It's a beautiful way to phrase it.
It is. And what is vital to understand here is that this philosophy doesn't demand perfection from the caretaker.
Because we're human, obviously.
Exactly. A person living with the consciousness of trust is still a human being. They are going to make mistakes. They will mishandle situations.
I would assume, though, that their reaction to a mistake looks very different than someone operating from a place of ownership.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Think about how an owner reacts to making a mistake.
They usually freak out.
Right, because their entire ego is tied up in the pristine, flawless image of their property, which in this case is their reputation.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
So when they fail, they expend massive amounts of energy fiercely defending the mistake.
Right.
They rationalize, they blame others, deny.
Go down.
Exactly. But a steward doesn't make themselves the absolute center of the universe.
Yeah.
Because their ego isn't tied to being the flawless owner, they can simply look at the mistake and correct it.
Trust bestows responsibility, not perfection.
Yes. It's a sign of maturity to say, I mishandled that entrustment, let me fix it, rather than fighting to the death to prove you were right all along.
I love that. And I'd love for you listening to this right now to just pause and look at your own daily stresses.
It's a really good exercise.
Think about your calendar, your to-do list, your goals for the year. Are you utterly exhausting yourself trying to build an empire of ownership? Or are you walking with the direction of trust? Because the physical toll of dragging that weight around is just staggering.
It really is a heavy burden.
But I do have to push back here for a second.
Okay, go for it.
If trust requires us to abandon the race of accumulation, this entire philosophy is going to violently collide with the ultimate arena of accumulation, which is the modern workplace.
The corporate proving ground. It is definitely the hardest place to apply this.
Right. Like if I'm a manager, my literal job description is to manage outcomes. I have to control the workflow. I have a boss who expects me to hit my quarterly metrics.
Sure, you have real responsibilities.
Well, exactly. So let's say my team misses a massive deadline. If I'm viewing my team through this lens of trust and non-ownership, do I just drop the reins? Do I just say, well, we don't own the outcome, guys, so no worries?
Right, that's the fear.
It just sounds a bit naive for a high-stakes corporate environment. How does a manager actually enforce standards without resorting to domination?
That is the natural pushback, and it relies on a misunderstanding of what stewardship actually is in practice. Stewardship doesn't mean apathy.
Okay, so what does it mean then?
Well, in professional life, we constantly mistake authority for ownership. We confuse managing a process with dominating the people within that process.
Oh, that's a really important distinction.
It is. Applying the framework of Amana doesn't mean abandoning your team or lowering your standards at all. It changes how you react when those standards aren't met.
Walk me through how that actually looks in real time, though. If the deadline is blown, what does the steward do differently than the owner?
What's fascinating here is that for someone looking through the lens of trust, authority signifies deep responsibility rather than superiority.
Superiority being the key word.
Right. If an owner-manager experiences a blown deadline, they view it as a personal insult. Their property, their team, has failed to reflect their greatness.
So they yell, they create a culture of fear.
Exactly. They manage through intimidation to protect their own ego.
Because the team's failure is seen as a literal dent in their personal armor.
Yes, exactly. A manager operating as a steward, however, views their employees as human beings placed in their care for 8 hours a day. They are entrustments.
So when the deadline is missed, what happens?
The steward manager still addresses the failure, but the emotional volatility is totally removed. They sit down with the team and say, hey, we missed the mark. Let's dissect the process and figure out where the breakdown occurred.
They solve the problem without stripping the employees of their humanity.
Exactly. The accountability is still there, but the toxicity is gone.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
And when you treat a team like an entrustment, rather than just a tool to extract value from, you cultivate an environment where work produces not just business results, but dignity.
Dignity isn't exactly a metric you see on a Q3 earnings report, though.
Unfortunately not. But if we connect this to the broader themes in the text, specifically ethical unity and collective harmony, we see how transformative this mechanism really is.
Because everyone is working together differently.
Right. When a workplace prioritizes shared responsibility over raw self-interest, it fundamentally changes the ecosystem. It stops being this cutthroat environment where everyone is trying to hoard credit and dodge blame.
You achieve the required outcomes not through domination, but through a collective consciousness of meaning.
Exactly. The team performs better because they feel guarded, not used.
Okay, so if treating employees as entrustments can create dignity in a cutthroat office, here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
What happens when we take this exact same framework and apply it to our personal lives, our partners, our kids, our closest friends?
It's a huge shift.
Because the text makes a point that feels totally counterintuitive at first glance. It claims that it isn't the bond of a relationship that exhausts us, it is the sense of ownership attached to that bond.
It's a really difficult pivot to make, to be honest. We are so heavily conditioned to measure love by the amount of effort we put in and the amount of gratitude or closeness we extract in return.
Like a transaction.
Yeah. The writings highlight how human relationships are constantly shaped by expectations rather than pure intentions. We do something supportive and we expect a reciprocal gesture.
And slowly, without us even realizing it, closeness morphs into possession.
Precisely. And that possession creates a suffocating environment.
Let's map this out with a family scenario. Let's say you have a teenager who is suddenly failing a class at school.
A classic stressor.
Right. If you approach your child as a domain that you own, how does that reaction play out versus a parent who views their child as a sacred trust?
Well, the parent operating from ownership will instantly view the failing grade as a reflection on their own success as a parent.
The anxiety spikes because their property is defective.
Exactly. And the intervention usually looks like intense surveillance, checking their homework every 5 minutes, grounding them, demanding perfection.
And the parent might genuinely believe they are helping.
Oh, absolutely. But the intervention stems from a place of control and ego. It's exhausting for the parent and just suffocating for the child.
They are managing their child's stats rather than guiding a human being.
But when that family bond is established with the consciousness of eminent, of trust, everything shifts. Trust replaces surveillance with faith.
So the steward parent still intervenes, right?
Yes, they hire a tutor, they help build study habits, but they don't tie their own self-worth to the child's report card. They recognize the child has their own path.
That sounds so much healthier.
The text describes the result of this mindset beautifully. It says, everyone has their space, yet no one is truly alone. It rescues love from possession and transforms it into the sensitivity of protection.
I love that. And I'm thinking about how this applies outside the family, too, to friendships.
Right, the text has a lot to say about that.
It brings up the concept of VIFA, which translates to fidelity or loyalty. It feels like the direct antidote to the hyper-transactional way we treat each other today.
The consciousness of trust in friendship actively decreases our constant demands. It creates this quiet steadfastness.
That's a great way to put it.
The writings make a really poignant observation that a friend is not a void to be filled, but a bond to be guarded.
I have absolutely been guilty of treating friends like emotional vending machines in the past.
Oh, I think we all have.
You know, you put in a coin, you listen to them vent about their job for 20 minutes, or you buy them dinner, and you expect the validation or the reciprocal favor to drop down into the tray immediately.
And when the vending machine gets stuck.
Exactly. When they are too busy to reply to a text or they don't react exactly how you want them to, you get angry. You start shaking the machine.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the trap of transactional expectations. When we operate like a customer at a vending machine, we start viewing whatever we didn't get from our friend as a violated right.
We build an internal ledger.
Yes, and disappointment turns into anger. But the text argues that trust softens this language of rights.
When you don't constantly demand a return on your investment, a friend's very existence becomes enough.
Precisely. This silent acceptance doesn't wear the friendship down, it actually makes you patient. It gives the relationship resilience.
It really highlights the modern disease of speed, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%.
We build relationships at light speed, we consume people quickly, and we cut them off with the exact same ease the moment they stop serving our immediate needs.
Because there is no underlying framework of trust. The framework of trust deliberately slows relationships down.
It puts the brakes on.
And I want to emphasize that this slowness isn't a deficiency. It isn't a lack of passion or care. It is the ultimate sign of care.
That's a beautiful thought.
A bond established with trust isn't gripped tightly just to keep the person from leaving. It is held gently to keep the bond guarded.
I want to read another couplet from the text here because it crystallizes this dynamic so well. It says, ownership constricts a bond. Trust lets it breathe. A tie built on trust does not wound. It guards and heals.
Letting it breathe is the key. When we drop the heavy language of ownership, we give the people we care about the oxygen to simply be who they are.
Rather than who we desperately need them to be to make ourselves feel secure.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? We've traveled from the concept of amana as a small everyday stance to letting go of the burden of false possession.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We've looked at how it redefines authority in a cutthroat workplace and how it gives our closest loved ones the oxygen to breathe.
Right.
If we synthesize all of this material, the ultimate takeaway seems to be an equation. Life and the people within it grow incredibly heavy the more we try to possess them.
But they lighten immensely when we carry them with the consciousness of trust. That is the absolute heart of the matter. And it leads to an incredible paradox at the very end of the text.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spend the vast majority of our lives obsessing over our legacy. We want to leave a mark. We amass wealth, titles, and influence so that people remember how important we were.
But that's just more ownership.
Exactly. The underlying argument here is that true permanence isn't found in what you accumulated. It's found in how you behaved toward what was given to you.
The legacy isn't the property you acquired. The legacy is the stance you took.
Let me share the final couplet from the writings because it sums up this enduring trace we leave behind perfectly. What remains is not property, but the trace of a stance held with trust. A human passes away, leaving behind a presence, not merely words in the dust.
Wow.
You are remembered for how you held the things placed in your care.
Leaving behind a presence. That completely flips the definition of a successful life on its head. It's not about the resume, it's about the resonance you leave in the room after you walk out.
That's a great way to put it, and this raises an important question.
I'm ready.
One that pushes these philosophical essays into a very personal, unexplored territory.
Well,
We've talked about stewarding our time, our careers, and our relationships. But what if we applied this exact same framework of non-ownership to our own physical bodies?
oh wow, I haven't thought about it like that at all.
Think about it. We spend decades fighting the natural aging process. We stress over every wrinkle, every physical decline, and our own mortality, largely because we feel we are the absolute owners of this physical vessel.
We totally do. We treat our bodies like property that is losing its market value.
Exactly. But if your own body is simply a temporary entrustment, a biological rental that you are merely stewarding for a few decades, how much lighter would the aging process feel?
That is wild to think about.
If you don't own it, you don't have to despair when it eventually begins to fade. You just care for it as best you can while you have it.
If you view your own body as a sacred trust instead of a permanent possession, you finally loosen your grip. You stop white-knuckling the steering wheel of your own mortality.
You just let your shoulders drop.
You let your shoulders drop and you just carry the direction, not the weight.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take that question with you, take that sense of lightness into the rest of your day, and we will catch you on the next one.